The Dyatlov Pass incident was a mysterious event that occurred in February 1959, in which 9 Soviet ski hikers died under uncertain circumstances. The group, composed of students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, embarked on a skiing expedition across the northern Urals in Sverdlovsk Oblast, Soviet Union. They planned to reach Mount Otertian, but deviated from their course due to worsening winter weather. They set up camp on Kholat Syakhl, where the tragic incident occurred. Mount Otorten has an elevation of approximately 1,147 meters above sea level. It is situated in the northern part of Sverdlovsk Oblast, Russia. In the Mansi language, Otorten is often interpreted as "don't go there." Kholat Syakhl has an elevation of approximately 1,096 meters above sea level. It is located on the border between the Komi Republic and Sverdlovsk Oblast in Russia. Derived from the Mansi language, Kholat Syakhl translates to "dead mountain" or "silent peak." The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most enigmatic and chilling mysteries in modern history. Over the years, theories have ranged from avalanches and infrasound-induced panic to secret military experiments and paranormal activity, keeping the mystery alive and fueling endless speculation. The expedition began in late January 1959. The group consisted of 9 young and experienced Soviet hikers, 7 men and 2 women. Led by Igor Dyatlov, they were well prepared for the journey. Each member was an experienced Grade 2 hiker with ski tour experience and would have received Grade 3 certification upon their return. The night of February 1st to 2nd, 1959, is crucial in the Dyatlov Pass incident, as it marks the group's final night before their tragic deaths. On the evening of February 1st, the 9 hikers set up camp on the eastern slopes of Kholat Syakhl, preparing to ascend Mount Otorten the next day. Based on their diaries, the group's mood on February 1st appeared to be positive and lighthearted, despite the challenging weather conditions. However, something occurred that night which caused them to cut their tent open from the inside and flee into the freezing wilderness without adequate clothing. In temperatures plunging below -30 degrees Celsius, they abandoned the safety of their shelter, many in socks, barefoot, or barely clothed. Their bodies were found scattered at varying distances from the camp, some with severe internal injuries but no external wounds, others missing facial features. Approximately 1.5 kilometers downhill from the tent, at the edge of a forest, the first 2 bodies were found near the remnants of a small fire. They were shoeless and dressed only in underwear, suggesting they succumbed to hypothermia. 3 more bodies were found at varying distances between the tent and the forest. The remaining 4 were discovered 2 months later, buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine 75 meters further into the woods. And yet, no external wounds, no signs of struggle, no tracks besides their own. The Soviet investigation offered little comfort. It concluded only that the group died due to a compelling natural force. But what kind of force drives 9 rational, experienced hikers to panic, flee, and die in such terrifying and unnatural ways? Speculation has flourished ever since. What makes this tragedy so enduring, so haunting, is not just the brutality of it. It's the silence left behind, the unanswered questions, the way the Soviet authorities sealed the files, the missing pages from the hikers' journals, the inconsistencies in the autopsies, and the sense that whatever happened that night, someone didn't want the world to know. 9 lives were lost, but their story didn't vanish in the snow. It became legend. In this documentary, we delve deeper than ever before into the team members, the expedition, the investigation, and the possible theories. We'll follow the hikers' path from their first photographs to their last recorded footsteps, and we'll explore the chilling possibility that some truths are not just buried, they're kept hidden. This is not just a tale of death. It is a riddle carved into the ice of time, a warning, a shadow. This is the mystery of the Dyatlov Pass. To understand what really happened in the Dyatlov case, we first need to look at the team members and what kind of trekking experience they had. Their background in hiking and past achievements are important for understanding and questioning some of the theories that came up later. At the beginning, the Dyatlov group included 10 people, 8 men and 2 women. Most of them were students or recent graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute in Sverdlovsk Oblast, Russia. The only exception was Alexander Zolotaryov, an older and more experienced hiker who joined the group later. Each member of the group was an experienced Grade 2 hiker with ski tour experience and would be receiving Grade 3 certification upon their return. Igor Dyatlov, the leader, intelligent, methodical, and deeply respected by those around him. From a young age, he showed exceptional technical ability. He designed and built a shortwave radio that he used during treks, a rare skill among students at the time. He studied radio engineering at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. His professors and peers described him as intelligent, disciplined, and highly capable. He had a reputation for being calm under pressure and was known for his leadership skills. Dyatlov had led multiple long-distance skiing and hiking expeditions. His previous treks included challenging routes through the Ural Mountains. He was well respected in the university's hiking community. If anyone could lead a team through the Ural wilderness, it was Igor. Zinaida Kolmogorova, bright, determined, and courageous. Zina was one of the most spirited members of the group. She had already completed similar expeditions and was known for her resilience, as well as her warm personality. On one trip, she was bitten by a viper, but despite the pain, she didn't let anyone carry her load. People who knew her called her the engine of the university, always full of ideas, energetic, and well-liked. She was outgoing, confident, and had completed 6 expeditions before this one, including 4 of second-category difficulty. Zina was particularly close with Igor Dyatlov and was often seen as one of the natural leaders of the group. Lyudmila Dubinina. Lyuda was a 4th-year civil engineering student at UPI and the youngest member of the group. She had a lot of hiking experience. On one trip, a hunter accidentally shot her in the leg. She bravely made the long and painful return journey alone. A teammate once said she was a strong and fair leader, thoughtful and helpful to beginners. She was excited and proud to join Dyatlov's group, training hard and preparing seriously. She was strong-willed and deeply principled. Rustam Slobodin, tall, athletic, and disciplined. He was a skilled long-distance runner and a recent university graduate. His calm demeanor and physical strength made him a dependable presence on the trail. Yuri Doroshenko, fearless and sometimes impulsive. Once chased a bear away with a geology hammer, he was passionate about nature and politics, a complex, bold figure within the group. Yuri was the tallest and one of the strongest members of the group. Yuri Georgy Krivonishenko. Yuri was close friends with Dyatlov and joined many of his expeditions. He was the joker of the group, often cheering everyone up with jokes and music. He played the mandolin on the trip. Later, traces of radioactivity were found on his clothes, though it's believed he had the knowledge to handle such materials safely due to his engineering background. Alexander Kolevatov, quiet and serious. A former KGB trainee and student of nuclear physics, Alexander rarely spoke about his past. His technical mind and composed nature earned the group's trust. Nikolai Thibault-Brignold, strong, intelligent, and easygoing. A talented athlete and recent graduate, he was half French through his father. His charm and calm confidence made him a natural team player. Semyon Zolotaryov was the most enigmatic member of the Dyatlov group. At 37 years old, he was significantly older than the others and joined the expedition at the last minute. A World War II veteran and survival instructor, he carried secrets that still fuel speculation today. Why did he insist on joining this particular hike? Why was he traveling under an alias? And why were his injuries far more severe than the rest? And finally, Yuri Yudin, the only survivor, not by fate but by illness. He turned back early in the expedition due to health issues. He would spend the rest of his life haunted by what happened to his friends. Yuri lived until 2013 and died at the age of 75. In his later years, Yuri gave many interviews and worked with researchers and reporters to find out more about what really happened. In one interview, he said he saw some items among the group's things that he didn't recognize. This made him think that someone else might have joined the group later, or that some things were added or changed after the event. It made him even more sure that the truth was being hidden. January 25th. The group arrived by train at Ivdel, a small town in the northern part of Sverdlovsk Oblast, Russia. They took a truck to Vizhai, the last inhabited village before the mountains. They spent the night there. Their goal was to reach Mount Otter-10, about 10 kilometers north of where the incident later occurred. At that time of year, the hiking route was rated as Category 3, the most difficult level. January 26th. The group rested and made final preparations in Vizhai, the last settlement on their route. They spent the day purchasing final supplies, checking and adjusting their equipment, and packing their backpacks. Among the essentials was canned stewed meat, tushanka, a high-calorie staple for Soviet mountaineers, especially in harsh winter conditions. They stayed overnight in Vizhai, planning to begin the serious part of their journey the next morning. January 27th. The hike began. The team set out from Vizhai toward Mount Otter-10. Spirits were high. Group members took photos and wrote in their diaries. The weather was unusually mild for the region. According to the hikers' diary entries, the temperature was around 5 degrees Celsius, or 41 degrees Fahrenheit, warm enough that skis were ineffective on the soft snow. This mild start may have given them a false sense of security, affecting their preparedness for the harsher conditions ahead. One hiker, Yuri Yudin, turned back due to health issues. He had an inflamed sciatic nerve and decided to return. He later expressed deep guilt for surviving, often saying, "I should have been with you," and visited their graves each year in mourning. The remaining group continued, now 9 people. January 28th to 31st, the group made steady progress through the northern Urals, following their planned route toward Mount Otter-10. By January 30th, they reached the edge of a highland area and began preparing for the more challenging ascent. They built a lay baz, a storage site, on January 31st where they left excess food and equipment to lighten their load for the climb. This was a common practice in Soviet trekking expeditions, meant for retrieval on the way back. Despite the grueling conditions, morale appeared high. The hikers regularly wrote in their diaries and took photographs, capturing both the routine of the trek and moments of camaraderie and humor. These entries and photos later became crucial in reconstructing their final days. From Igor Dyatlov's diary, "Today the weather was a bit worse because of wind and snow, but the sky was perfectly clear. We started relatively early, around 10 a.m. Today offered surprisingly good accommodations for the tent. The air was warm and dry, despite the low temperature of minus 18 degrees Celsius to minus 24 degrees Celsius. On February 1st, the group began crossing the pass. Their plan was to reach the other side and camp there, but due to worsening weather, snowfall, and low visibility, they lost their way and veered off course, heading up toward the top of Kolatsyakol instead. Realizing the mistake, they chose to stop and set up camp right on the slope, even though a forested area just 1.5 kilometers below would have offered better shelter. It's believed Dyatlov didn't want to lose the elevation they had gained, or he may have wanted the group to practice camping on a mountain slope. They pitched the tent around 5 p.m. and had dinner between 6 and 7 p.m. Later, 2 members, Semyon and Thibaut Brignol, went outside, possibly to relieve themselves. They were the only ones who were more fully dressed. Then something went terribly wrong. Several members of the group made their final diary entries on February 1st, 1959. Zenaida Kolmogorova wrote that the group had begun their ascent toward the pass. She described the challenges of the trail, the weather, and the group's mood. There was no sign of concern in her words. On the contrary, her tone was cheerful and humorous. The group's collective expedition diary also contained a final entry dated February 1st. It stated that the group had set up their tent on the slope, were preparing dinner, and were getting ready for the night. They had decided to camp directly on the open mountainside so they could continue their journey immediately in the morning. This confirmed that the group was calm and functioning normally up until the night. Whatever happened occurred after they went to sleep. What happened during that night? This is precisely why the tragedy remains so mysterious. February 12th was the day the Dyatlov group was supposed to return to the town of Vizhai, where they would send a telegram to confirm their safe arrival. Igor Dyatlov, the leader of the group, had told the sports club at Ural Polytechnic Institute that they planned to return and contact them by this date. However, no message arrived. At first, there was no panic. Delays in such expeditions were common. But as days passed with no word, concern grew among families and fellow students. The first person who began to worry was Vladimir Mikhailovich Slobodin, the father of Rustem Slobodin, a doctor of agricultural sciences and head of the department at the Ural Research Institute of Agriculture. He telephoned the UPI Sports Club and was told that the return of the Dyatlov group might be delayed due to bad weather condition. On February 16th, alarmed by the continued lack of information, Yuri Blinov and Lev Gordo, the board chairman of the UPI Sports Club, initiated an official inquiry into the whereabouts of the Dyatlov group. Blinov telephoned Valerian Ufimtsev, an inspector from the city committee, urging immediate action. By that point, the group was more than 2 weeks overdue, and concern had grown into quiet panic among the students, families, and faculty at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. As urgency mounted, the first rescue groups were organized, made up of volunteer students, local guides, and teachers with hiking experience. They began searching the Dyatlov group's planned route on foot and on skis. However, it quickly became clear that the conditions were too harsh and the terrain too vast for civilian teams alone. On February 20th, the Soviet government authorized a full-scale rescue operation. The military stepped in, deploying helicopters, aircraft, and experienced personnel trained in cold-weather survival. Soldiers with search dogs were brought in, along with police and special forces. Despite these reinforcements, the operation was severely hindered by extreme weather. Temperatures plunged to minus 30 degrees Celsius, minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit, and powerful winds combined with heavy snow created whiteout conditions. Visibility was almost non-existent at times, and deep snowdrifts covered potential signs and trails. The brutal conditions not only slowed progress but also placed the rescuers themselves at risk. Despite their training and equipment, moving across the Siberian wilderness in those circumstances required incredible effort and coordination. Days passed with no sign of the missing hikers, and fear began to grow that the outcome would be grim. The entire search operation felt rushed. There was pressure coming from Moscow, creating a very tense atmosphere. Everyone was anxious for answers and desperate for news. Ashkenazy also mentioned that during that period, he had a strong impression that those in charge were not genuinely interested in conducting a thorough investigation. He recalls that the lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, didn't even approach the platform of tree branches, didn't take any photographs. It seemed as though they already had a predetermined theory. An interesting and disturbing incident occurred during the evacuation of the bodies from the scene. The military helicopter crew refused to transport the bodies unless they were placed in zinc coffins. Zinc coffins are typically used for transporting highly dangerous remains, such as those contaminated with radiation, hazardous chemicals, or in cases where the truth must be concealed. The situation escalated to the point that the leader of the search operation, Colonel Orchukov, drew his pistol and threatened the helicopter crew. Only after this confrontation were the bodies transported. This episode strongly suggests that Moscow wanted to keep the incident quiet and prevent the spread of rumors. Despite the scale of the tragedy, the deaths of an entire group of students from a prestigious institute, Soviet newspapers, magazines, and radio broadcasts at the time offered no detailed reporting on the incident. This is surprising, as such an event would normally provoke a significant public response. The first public mention of the Dyatlov Pass incident in the Soviet press appeared in the newspaper Ural Worker, Uralsky Rabochi, on March 1, 1959, about a month after the hikers went missing. The article was brief, vague, and cautious, reflecting the tight control of Soviet media. At the time of the Dyatlov tragedy, Soviet newspapers in early 1959 were dominated by stories of triumph and progress. Headlines celebrated the launch of Luna 1, the first spacecraft to reach the vicinity of the moon, marking a major victory in the space race. There was also heavy coverage of Nikita Khrushchev's reforms, such as the Virgin Lands campaign, painting a picture of a strong, advancing Soviet society. In the USSR, strict censorship was enforced. All published materials were reviewed by Glavlit, the state censorship agency that decided what could and could not be released. The story of the Dyatlov Pass, with its mysterious injuries, unusual military behavior, and rumors of radiation, did not align with the desired image of a stable and safe Soviet state. It was easier to ignore the questions than to admit the answers. On February 26th, the search team made the first major breakthrough in the Dyatlov Pass mystery, the discovery of the group's abandoned tent. It was found on the slope of Kolasyakhl, partially collapsed and covered with snow. Understanding what happened at the tent is key to understanding the entire tragedy. All of their belongings, including warm clothing, boots, and equipment, were still inside, untouched. After the discovery, the tent was brought to the Ivdel police station and hung in the largest room so it could be photographed. At first, investigators believed that vandals or attackers had cut the tent open, but everything changed by accident. A local woman who had been asked to help repair a police uniform noticed the tent and pointed out that the cuts had been made from the inside. She based this on the direction the fabric had torn. The edges were pushed outward. This surprising observation changed the course of the investigation. It means that the hikers had exited through those slashes rather than the door. Later, a forensic expert, Genrietta Churkina, confirmed the cuts had come from inside the tent during lab analysis conducted in Sverdlovsk from April 3rd to April 16th, 1959. From official report, the campsite was located on the northeast slope of Mountain 1079, near the source of the Ospaya River. It sat about 300 meters below the summit on a steep 30-degree incline. The snow was flattened beneath the tent, and 8 pairs of skis had been placed underneath it for support. The tent was propped up with poles and secured with ropes. Inside, investigators found 9 backpacks, shoes, clothing, jackets, raincoats, and personal items. The tent's entrance faced south, while the northern side was buried under about 15 to 20 centimeters of snow. Experts noted that the snow seemed to have been blown there by strong wind. It was loose, not compacted, which ruled out an avalanche. Nearby, a pair of skis stood upright in the snow, another detail inconsistent with an avalanche. At the entrance, searchers found an ice axe. Next to it lay Dyatlov's jacket. Strangely, he had taken it off outside in freezing conditions. Initially, rescuers didn't expect the hikers to be dead, so they didn't take care to preserve or document the footprints around the site. To this day, it's unclear how many people were actually there. However, reports and surviving photos indicate about 8 or 9 sets of footprints. They appeared to be made by people in socks or bare feet. No boots. The prints formed shallow columns in the snow, and the hikers had walked in a single file, with a taller person in the rear. The trail looked calm and orderly, like a normal walk downhill. After examining everything we know about the tent, I've reached the following conclusions. The hikers left without proper clothing. No coats, boots, or gloves. Something very serious must have frightened them enough to flee into the freezing night. They likely faced 2 choices: stay in the tent and die immediately, or run down the slope with almost no gear and try to survive. They left behind 3 axes and 3 knives. Yet they made no attempt to defend themselves. They didn't go toward their supply cache. Instead, they headed into the forest in the opposite direction. The supply area remained untouched. This is strange because these were intelligent, physically fit, and experienced hikers. They understood the deadly risk of the Siberian winter. Leaving the tent without protection could only mean that what they faced inside was even more dangerous than the cold outside. Something happened that night, which caused a well-trained, disciplined group of young people to panic. They ran into the dark forest with no shoes, no jackets, and no weapons. The Cedar Tree is one of the most important clues in the Dyatlov Pass case because it provides critical context about what happened during the group's final moments, particularly regarding their attempts to survive after fleeing their tent under strange and unexplained circumstances. In many mystical versions of the story, the cedar is seen not just as a landmark, but as the group's last hope, a kind of shelter from something unknown, something beyond explanation. The tree itself was located at the edge of the forest, on the eastern slope of Mount Koletsyakhl, approximately 1.5 kilometers downslope from the hiker's tent. It was under this tree that the first 2 bodies were found, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko. A campfire was found beneath the tree, evidence that this was the only place where the hikers tried to stay warm after abandoning their camp. Burned branches, ashes, and signs of scorching on the bodies confirmed that they were still alive, still fighting for survival at least for a while. It's likely that the cedar was their first stop after fleeing into the freezing night. Then came another clue. Several branches were broken as high as 4 to 5 meters. The 2 bodies showed cuts, bruises, and soft tissue injuries, especially on the hands and forearms. This suggests that someone had climbed the tree, perhaps in desperation, to look back at the tent, to escape something, to search for light or a signal in the distance. In the darkness and storm, this tree may have been the only place they could see anything at all. Some researchers believe one or both of them may have fallen from the branches, based on the nature of their injuries. But the cedar tree is more than just a shelter. It is the first link in a tragic chain. Experts believe the group's final movements begin here. From the tree, a trail of footsteps led toward a nearby stream, where more bodies would later be found. some buried beneath deep snow and layers of brush. The cedar marks the turning point, after which the hikers began to freeze, hide, and die one by one. It is the most important scene after the tent. Everything that happened here raises vital questions. Why did they run to this place? Why did they climb the tree? What were they trying to see or trying to escape? And why did the true horror seem to begin only after they reached this point? The cedar tree may never give us answers, but it stands, frozen in time, as the line between survival and tragedy. The den is the key element in reconstructing the events. It was here that the final stage of the tragedy unfolded. If we could understand exactly what happened in the den, it would likely answer the fundamental question: what killed the Dyatlov group? That's why understanding what occurred at this location is critically important. In early May, the snow began to melt rapidly, revealing broken conifer branches and scraps of clothing. The Mansi searchers noticed these traces and suggested digging out a ravine by the stream. The excavation uncovered, beneath more than 2.5 meters of snow, a flooring approximately 3 square meters in size, made from the tops of 14 small fir trees and 1 birch. Several pieces of clothing were found on the flooring, arranged in a way that looked like seating spots for 4 people. A den is a simple shelter built from branches, spruce twigs, or other natural materials to protect against cold, wind, and snow. It's made on the ground to insulate the body from the frozen surface and retain warmth. The flooring is a layer of branches, grass, or similar material laid on the snow or ground to protect from cold and moisture. It acts as insulation so the body doesn't come into direct contact with the frozen ground. On May 4th, during continued searches in the ravine, around 6 meters downstream from the flooring, bodies of the remaining tourists were discovered beneath a layer of snow 2 to 2.5 meters deep. Lyudmila Dubinina was found first, kneeling with her chest leaning on a ledge formed by the stream's waterfall, her head facing upstream. Shortly after, 3 men were found near her. Thibaut Brignol lay separately, while Kolevatov and Zolotaryov appeared to be embracing chest to back. Injuries and damage. Lyudmila Dubinina, broken ribs on both sides, missing tongue, lips, and eyes. Alexander Zolotaryov, broken ribs and internal chest trauma. Nikolai Thibaut Brignol, crushed skull, as if from a powerful blow. Alexander Kolevatov, fewer injuries, likely died from hypothermia. There were no external wounds, which rules out an attack with a weapon. Experts stated these injuries could only result from very high pressure, comparable to what one might see in a car crash. Key observations. 1. The only location with signs of survivor activity. A branch flooring, scraps of clothing, and attempts at building a shelter were found here. This means some group members survived the initial incident and tried to save themselves. This challenges the theory that all died instantly and shifts the timeline of the tragedy. 2. Severe internal injuries with no external damage, only in the den. 3 of the victims had crushed ribs or skulls caused by tremendous force. Yet there were no bruises, cuts, or signs of a struggle, almost as if the injuries were caused by immense pressure from inside the body or a broad surface impact. This contradicts typical trauma from avalanches or physical assaults. Importantly, the bodies were found near but not inside the den. This has led to speculation that an explosion or powerful event may have thrown them from it. 3. Traces of radiation were discovered. Low levels of radioactive contamination were found on the clothing of Zolotaryov and Dubinina. The source remains unknown. This has fueled theories involving military testing or unconventional weapon use. 4. The den is far from both the tent and the cedar tree. This suggests the group deliberately moved there, possibly in search of shelter. But why did they go in that direction? What were they fleeing from? This may indicate that someone or something forced them to descend the slope. According to various estimates, there are between 75 and over 100 theories about the Dyatlov group's deaths, which can be divided into 3 main categories. 1. Natural causes. These theories consider powerful natural environmental forces and the Dyatlov group's response to them as the main cause of the tragedy. 2. Technogenic and criminal. Common to these theories is the presence of malicious human intent, either in the form of the group being murdered or a cover-up of some man-made factor that impacted them. 3. Mystical explanations. These include paranormal or scientifically unrecognized phenomena, such as alien encounters, curses, attacks by the Yeti, or supernatural forces. On February 26, 1959, an official investigation was launched, and a criminal case was opened following the discovery of the bodies. It took 3 months. During this period, investigators searched the area, recovered all 9 bodies, conducted autopsies, interviewed witnesses, and compiled forensic reports. On May 28, 1959, the case was closed due to lack of evidence of a crime. The investigation was led by prosecutor criminalist Lev Nikitich Ivanov. In the final report, Ivanov concluded that the tragedy occurred during the night of February 1st to 2nd. This conclusion was based on the last diary entries and photo frames found in the hikers' cameras. Ivanov noted that the group made two serious mistakes that left them vulnerable in harsh weather conditions. Dyatlov made a serious mistake by starting the climb late, at 3 p.m. on February 1st, 1959. The group then veered off course and ended up on the eastern slope of Peak 1079 instead of the intended pass. This was his second error. Given the absence of external injuries or signs of a struggle on the bodies, the presence of all valuables, and considering the forensic medical report on the causes of death, it should be concluded that the hikers died from an overwhelming force of nature, which they were unable to overcome. However, the investigation and the conclusions in this case raised many questions. 1. Conclusion was not clear. This conclusion is ambiguous and fails to clearly explain what actually happened. What was this force? An avalanche? Wind? Extreme cold? Panic? Such a conclusion left the door open for numerous theories and rumors. This is not a legal or scientific conclusion. It avoids giving a direct answer. Even at the time, it sparked doubts among investigators and the victims' families. The investigation lasted only 3 months. For such a complex and multi-layered case, this is a suspiciously short period. Many witnesses were questioned only briefly. Some materials were classified and later even disappeared. It gave the impression that the authorities wanted to close the case quickly, avoiding wider public scrutiny. 3. Ignoring anomalous evidence. Radiation traces on clothing were not properly investigated. Injuries, especially on Dubinina and Thibaut Brignol, were highly unusual, comparable to a car crash, but without external wounds. Eyewitness reports of fireballs in the sky were dismissed. The investigation deliberately narrowed its focus and excluded inconvenient possibilities like military testing, energy phenomena, or external interference. 4. Pressure and secrecy. Search team members were forced to sign non-disclosure agreements. Several documents were classified for decades. No information was published in the press for a long time. This suggests that the state controlled the narrative, possibly hiding something, whether due to military secrecy or other motives. Conclusion: the 1959 resolution provided no real answers, only more mysteries. Though Soviet authorities officially closed the case, the public remained unconvinced. That's why even decades later, people continue to search for the truth, and the Dyatlov Pass incident remains the most famous mystery of the 20th century in the USSR. The theory that the Mansi, the indigenous people of the northern Urals, were involved in the deaths of the Dyatlov group was one of the first considered by investigators, but it was later officially dismissed. Nevertheless, it continues to attract interest from some researchers. The Mansi are a Finno-Ugric people who traditionally inhabit the Khanty-Mansi Autonomous Okrug. Near Mount Kholat Syakhl, the site of the tragedy, the Mansi had sacred lands where they hunted, fished, and herded reindeer. Mansi religion was traditionally animistic. They believed spirits inhabited natural elements like rivers, mountains, and animals. They often had bear cults and believed bears were messengers between the worlds. Mansi spiritual leaders or shamans played a central role in connecting with spirits through chants, drumming, and rituals. These practices were believed to protect hunters and heal the sick. Essence of the theory. According to this theory, the Dyatlov group intruded upon and desecrated sacred Mansi territory. In retaliation, the Mansi allegedly decided to punish them. Proponents suggest the following sequence of events. 1. A deliberate attack, carried out at night to catch the hikers off guard. 2. Forcing the group out of the tent, possibly using weapons or physical intimidation. 3. Chasing and killing them, away from the tent to confuse investigators. 4. Concealing evidence. Bodies were hidden under snow, some bearing signs of mutilation. Why the theory was considered. Footprints of several individuals were found on the slope, initially thought to possibly belong to the Mansi. Some bodies exhibited severe injuries resembling physical trauma. The area is sacred to the Mansi. Kholat Syakhl translates as Mountain of the Dead. A Mansi tent was reportedly discovered near the group's last known location. The Mansi are a people who consider these mountains their ancestral hunting grounds. If a warning was misunderstood by the hikers, a verbal disagreement could potentially have escalated into violence. Why the theory was dismissed. The Mansi cooperated fully with the investigation and assisted in the search. No evidence linked them to the incident. No signs of struggle typical of a human conflict were found on the bodies. There is no known history of violent crime attributed to the Mansi in the region. The group's valuables, including money, cameras, and gear, were untouched, ruling out robbery as a motive. The avalanche theory is considered the most popular and scientifically supported explanation for the Dyatlov Pass incident because it offers a rational, natural explanation for the hikers' mysterious deaths without relying on supernatural, military, or conspiratorial ideas. In response to pressure from the victims' families, public organizations, and the media, who were dissatisfied with the original 1959 investigation, the Russian Prosecutor General's office reopened the Dyatlov case in September 2018. On February 1, 2019, official spokesperson Alexander Kurenoy announced that the re-examination confirmed the reliability of the original criminal investigation materials. No evidence of criminal involvement was found. The office identified three natural explanations as the most likely causes: avalanche, snow slab, hurricane-force winds. On July 11, 2020, the final conclusion was published. A snow avalanche was declared the primary cause. It allegedly forced the hikers to flee the tent. Due to limited visibility, they could not return and eventually succumbed to extreme cold. There are many incidents around the world where avalanches have killed hikers. The most similar to Dyatlov was an avalanche incident in the Höllental Valley, Germany. On January 30, 2021, a group of German hikers was camping in tents near the base of a slope in a remote alpine area. Overnight, a small but powerful slab avalanche struck their campsite, burying the tents under snow. 2 hikers were killed, and several others were injured. Rescuers had to dig them out after GPS signals and emergency alerts were activated. Let's look now on evidence supporting the avalanche theory 1. The tent was cut open from the inside. The group fled the tent without boots or coats in a sign of panic. This behavior suggests a sudden external threat, like a collapsing wall of snow. Second, avalanche-prone slope. The tent was pitched on a 30-degree slope, a potentially unstable angle for snow accumulation. The group had carved into the slope to set up camp, which could have weakened the snowpack. This disturbance may have made the snow less stable, increasing the risk of a slab avalanche, where a top layer of snow slides off suddenly. Third, internal injuries consistent with heavy pressure. 2 hikers, Dubinina and Thibaut Brignol, had crushed ribs and fractured skulls without surface wounds. Some experts argue this type of trauma is consistent with the immense force of compacted snow. Counter-arguments against the avalanche theory 1. The tent was not buried or destroyed. The tent remained partially visible and upright. Most of the gear inside was intact and undisturbed. A real avalanche would have swept away or severely damaged the tent and scattered belongings. 2. Visible tracks. Leading away from the tent, footprints of barefoot or lightly dressed individuals stretch more than 500 meters from the campsite. Survivors appeared to walk calmly and in an organized fashion, unlikely if they'd just survived an avalanche. 3. Unusual nature of injuries. Typical avalanche fatalities involve asphyxiation or limb fractures. Here, some victims had massive chest trauma, internal bleeding, and even a heart rupture, but no bruises or scratches. These resemble localized blunt force, not uniform snow compression. Among the many theories surrounding the Dyatlov Pass incident, the fireball theory holds a special place. It blends eyewitness accounts with an air of mystery and remains one of the most widely discussed explanations. According to Vladimir Koroteyev, who worked at the Ivdel prosecutor's office in 1959, local Mansi people reported seeing a strange fireball in the night sky. They not only described the phenomenon but also drew it. Official case materials note that on February 17th, many residents of the middle and northern Urals, including hikers near the watershed of the North Toshemka and Vizhai rivers, just 50 to 60 kilometers from where the Dyatlov group died, witnessed a fireball in the sky. Later, on March 31st, search team members also reported seeing a fireball near the incident site. Given these multiple independent reports of a mysterious aerial phenomenon, investigator Lev Ivanov began to suspect a connection between the fireball and the group's deaths. During the forensic analysis of the bodies found in May, experts noted that some injuries resembled fractures caused by a powerful force. Ivanov hypothesized that the hikers might have been exposed to some kind of energy impact. He sent samples of their clothing and internal organs to the Sverdlovsk City Sanitary and Epidemiological Station for physical, technical, radiological analysis. Radiologist Levashov reached the following conclusions. 1. The tested solid biological tissues contained radioactive substances within natural levels, mainly due to potassium-40. 2. Some individual pieces of clothing showed slightly elevated levels of radioactive materials. The radioactive contamination washed off during sample cleaning, meaning it was not caused by neutron exposure or induced radiation, but likely by external beta contamination. What could this explain? 1. Military tests. Ballistic missile testing was known to occur in the Urals region. Fireballs may have been the visual result of such launches. There are documents confirming missile activity during that time, although the military has officially denied involvement. 2. Panic triggered by bright lights. If the hikers saw a glowing object or thought an explosion was imminent, they may have fled the tent in a state of panic, without dressing properly. 3. Exposure to heat, radiation, or pressure. The fireball could have been the source of infrasound or radiation, possibly causing disorientation, intense fear, or even physiological effects. What's not confirmed? No physical evidence of an explosion or crash was found near the tent. Witnesses saw the fireballs from a distance, not necessarily over the Dyatlov campsite. The autopsies did not show typical burn injuries or signs of severe radiation exposure on all bodies. The Yeti, or abominable snowman, theory emerged as a potential explanation for the Dyatlov group's mysterious deaths, primarily due to a controversial photograph taken by one of the group members. Photo number 17 is one of the most mysterious and debated images related to the Dyatlov case. It has been widely referred to as the Yeti shadow or forest silhouette, sparking a wave of mystical theories, especially after the 2000s because digital technology, internet forums, and conspiracy media gave the photo global exposure. What's seen in photo number 17? A dark, blurry figure standing in a snowy forest. The figure appears humanoid with long arms and a broad back. Due to the lack of focus, it's unclear whether it's a person, a shadow, or a visual trick caused by snow and light. The figure's proportions seem unnatural, with unusually long arms, reminiscent of a primate. In 2014, the Discovery Channel produced a documentary that explored the Dyatlov Pass tragedy through the lens of the Yeti theory. The film stirred controversy due to its sensational and mystical interpretation of real events. The host, Mike Lebecki, an American mountaineer and explorer, proposed that the group may have died as a result of an encounter with an unknown creature resembling a Yeti. The documentary highlights photo number 17 as key evidence. Unusual injuries on the bodies, e.g., massive internal trauma without external wounds. Strange group behavior such as fleeing the tent, barefoot into freezing temperatures. Secrecy by Soviet authorities, suggesting a cover-up. How the Yeti theory explains the tragedy. According to the documentary, the group may have been frightened by strange sounds or the appearance of a large creature. Panic ensued, and the hikers fled the tent without properly dressing for the cold. But some scenes in the documentary are dramatized and include a fictional diary not found in official case materials. Reports of Yeti sightings or similar creatures in the northern Ural Mountains are not uncommon. In particular, the Sverdlovsk region, where the Dyatlov incident occurred, has long been associated with legends of mysterious beings living in the wilderness. In the 1970s and 1980s, local hunters and geologists occasionally reported strange tracks near Mount Otterton and Mount Kolotsiakol, observations of large moving figures that didn't match known animals or humans. Strengths of the theory: explains irrational behavior. The group's sudden escape from the tent without shoes or coats could be a reaction to intense fear. 2. Unusual tracks. Investigators noted footprints of varying sizes near the tent. Some believe not all belong to the group. 3. Photo number 17. One of the last images on the film appears to show a humanoid figure in the forest, often cited as evidence. 4. Unexplained injuries. Some victims suffered severe internal trauma, like crushed ribs and skull fractures, without corresponding external wounds, as interpreted by some as the result of a physical attack. Weaknesses of the theory: 1. Lack of physical evidence. No hair, bones, or DNA evidence of an unknown creature has ever been found. 2. No signs of struggle. There were no scratches, bites, or claw marks on the bodies that would indicate an animal attack. A Katabatic wind is one of the possible natural factors that may have played a role in the Dyatlov group tragedy. It refers to a cold, dense mass of air that flows rapidly downhill from mountains or elevated terrain. These winds can intensify quickly and reach dangerous speeds, making them a serious hazard due to their low temperature, power, and sudden onset. Katabatic winds occur when cold air accumulates at higher elevations and begins to descend rapidly down the slopes. Because cold air is heavier than warm air, it rushes downward like an air avalanche. This movement can be extremely forceful, especially under the following conditions. Very low nighttime temperatures, as was the case in February 1959 on the Dyatlov Pass. Wind speeds that can reach 50 to 100 kilometers per hour or more. Such winds can cause a rapid drop in temperature by several degrees. If a group is caught unprepared, it can lead to hypothermia, frostbite, or even death. The first person who suggested the Katabatic winds theory was Thomas Holmgren, a Swedish scientist and former mountaineer. He proposed this explanation in the early 2010s after studying weather patterns and wind behavior in the Dyatlov Pass area. Holmgren focused on Katabatic winds and how they could have caused the hikers to panic and flee their tent, leading to the tragic outcome. The Holmgren theory presents its account of the Dyatlov Pass incident through a straightforward sequence of 13 events described in Thomas' blog. 1. The group spends a few hours skiing up the slope of Kholat Shakal, but due to worsening weather, they're forced to stop and make camp around 5 p.m. 2. They dry wet clothes inside the tent but don't use a stove due to lack of firewood. 3. A violent wind damages the tent. 4. The group becomes aware of the danger to their tent. Their main priority becomes protecting their shelter from any irreparable damage. They decide to quickly escape the tent by slicing open the side, something they have the materials to repair in the morning. The outside temperature at this point has fallen as low as negative 60 degrees, and the hikers know they won't be able to survive a night hunkered down in the tent. 5. In order to save their shelter from damage, they collapse part of it and shovel snow onto the middle by hand. With the tent safe, their new priority is getting off the exposed slope. Before they leave, they place a flashlight on the tent facing the woods so that they can find their way back when conditions improve. 6. The group hikes towards the forest at a controlled pace. 7. The party splits up into 2 groups, Krivonishenko and Doroshenko staying behind at the tree line to attempt to build a fire, as the other 7 move slightly further into the woods to build 2 impromptu shelters, called snow caves or bivouacs. The exertion from digging these shelters likely helped these 7 keep their body temperature up, allowing them to survive for a little while longer. 8. Krivonishenko and Doroshenko fail to warm up and eventually succumb to the cold 9. The remaining 7 managed to finish building the shelters. Upon realizing that their friends hadn't been successful with the fire, the survivors took their clothes for themselves and retreated to the ravine. The 4 most injured and exhausted went into bivouac 1. 10. The remainders are once again separated into 2 groups, with 4 now lying in bivouac 1 and 3 planning to stay in bivouac 2, Dyatlov, Slobodin, and Kolmogorova. 11. Bivouac 1 collapses, crushing the 4 inside of it. The final 3 survivors, realizing that their shelter likely isn't safe, make an unsuccessful attempt to return to the tent, freezing on the way. 12. The hikers have their injuries exaggerated by decomposition and the weight of the snow above them. Extra injuries are also possibly caused by the searchers' eventual attempts to probe the snow and locate the bodies. 13. The tent is left with distinct west-east wind patterns in the snow covering it, and the majority of the bodies are buried under a thin layer of wind-swept snow. In contrast to other proposed explanations, the Holmgren theory seemingly leaves no piece of evidence unaddressed, and manages to provide a solid explanation of that night's events. The main mystery of the tragedy remains the group's exit from the tent. The cause could be some extraordinary natural phenomenon, such as the flight of a meteorological rocket. Observed on February 1st in Avdel and by Carolyn's group tomorrow, we will continue the search. It is one of the official communications sent during the initial search and investigation phase. The mention of Carolyn's group and observations in Avdel suggest that search teams or nearby groups had reported seeing strange phenomena that investigators tried to correlate with the hikers' behavior. There was once a small piece of evidence supporting the rocket theory that came to the attention of Vladimir Korotayev. He later said that some scientists hinted at secret testing taking place. However, researchers found no official records of any rocket launches in the Soviet Union on February 1st or 2nd. Still, signs of a possible rocket cult may remain in the Sverdlovsk forest. Since the search operation, rumors have persisted about a secret military base nearby. Locals speak of military patrols deep in the forest, hillsides sealed with concrete, and strange underground trains. In 1959, the Cold War was at its height, and the Soviet Union was deeply engaged in a fierce technological and military competition with the West. As part of this effort, the USSR was actively developing and testing a wide range of advanced weapon systems, including ballistic rockets, experimental aerial mines, and other top-secret military technologies. The combination of remoteness, natural barriers, strategic position, developed infrastructure, and challenging environment makes the Ural Mountains an excellent and historically important zone for weapons testing. There is evidence in Soviet-era newspapers and official documents suggesting that the Dyatlov Pass area was used for military testing during the Cold War. Gennady Kizilov, a journalist from Yekaterinburg, was one of the earliest and most vocal supporters of the theory that the Dyatlov Pass scene was staged. He pointed out contradictions in witness statements and rescue reports, suggesting that something far more serious had occurred than just a mishandled investigation. He believed that the Dyatlov group had witnessed secret military tests they weren't supposed to see and were subsequently killed by the military. Kizilov claimed the rescue mission was a cover-up, and that stage workers had arrived days earlier to prepare the scene for what the search team would eventually discover. He also said that the military and KGB moved the bodies from the actual place of death to the ridge at Dead Mountain, 1079, and altered the group's diaries during the investigation to conceal the truth. Some rescuers and experts believe the tent was correctly pitched, but others disagree. They argue that experienced hikers wouldn't have set up a tent on an exposed slope when there were trees nearby that offered shelter, especially in such strong winds. These critics believe the tent was originally set up elsewhere and later moved to the slope by unknown individuals to create confusion. At a 2008 conference at the Ural State Technical University, in collaboration with the Dyatlov Group Memorial Foundation, it was concluded that military testing was responsible for the incident. However, the Federal Security Service responded that all individuals involved in the case had already passed away. The rocket theory remains one of the most intriguing explanations for the Dyatlov Pass incident. Despite a lack of official records confirming rocket launches on February 1st to 2nd, 1959, rumors of secret military tests in a nearby covert base persist. Some experts and witnesses suggest the hikers accidentally witnessed or were caught in classified military experiments, leading to their deaths and a subsequent cover-up involving staged scenes and altered evidence. While no definitive proof has surfaced, the theory fits the Cold War context and the mysterious circumstances surrounding the tragedy. The Ural Mountains are home to many wild animals, and many of them can pose a deadly threat to humans under specific conditions. One of the largest predators in Russia are brown bears. They are powerful, fast, and extremely dangerous when provoked. But here's the thing. The Dyatlov hikers died in early February, deep in the Russian winter. That's hibernation season. Bears wouldn't be active at that time. Another popular animal is wolf, but it rarely go after people, especially not a group of 9 strong adults. And investigators found no bite marks or claw wounds, no signs of struggle, no wolf tracks. Wolverines? Fierce little beasts, pound for pound, one of the most aggressive animals in the forest. But even the angriest wolverine isn't going to crush someone's ribs or fracture a skull without leaving a single scratch. In January 2013, researcher Alexander Konstantinov suggested that the Dyatlov group might have pitched their tent along a reindeer trail. He theorized that a reindeer, fleeing from danger, could have tripped over the tent, causing the group's injuries. Since adult reindeer weigh between 100 and 200 kilograms, this could explain the trauma observed on the hikers' bodies. His theory was first published in the Ural Stalker Journal. According to Konstantinov, all the hikers' most serious injuries may have been caused by a single deer. In the cold, unheated tent, the group lay close together. The deer may have stumbled into a snow pit or tripped over the tent's ropes, falling onto S.A. Zolotaryov and L.A. Dubinina. Zolotaryov, lying on his left side, suffered 5 broken ribs on his right. Dubinina, lying on her back, had 4 broken ribs on the right side and 6 on the left. The deer likely fell with its legs bent, intensifying the impact. As the deer moved to stand up, it rolled over Zia Kolmogorova. She may have been crushed but not seriously injured, though she could have sustained a nose injury. While getting up, the deer shifted its weight to one leg, increasing the pressure and causing head injuries to R.V. Slobodin, a 6-centimeter skull fracture and bleeding in both temples, and then to N.V. Thibaut Brignol, a 9 by 7 centimeter skull fracture with a 3-centimeter crushed area in the temple. This crushing was likely caused by the edge of the deer's hoof, as it tried to balance on the unstable ground. There are documented cases of deer, particularly reindeer, injuring or even killing humans, although such incidents are rare. For instance, in herding regions like Lapland, northern Scandinavia, it is not uncommon for reindeer herders to be knocked down or trampled by startled animals weighing over 100 kilograms. In one case from February 2007, a herder suffered multiple broken ribs and a concussion after a panicked reindeer charged and stepped on him. The nature of these injuries, chest trauma, bone fractures, and head injuries, bears some similarity, though generally less severe, to those found in the Dyatlov group. Among the most mysterious and controversial explanations for the Dyatlov past tragedy is the UFO theory. Although lacking official recognition, this theory continues to capture the imagination of researchers, conspiracy theorists, and paranormal enthusiasts. Supporters of this version point to unexplained lights seen in the sky the night of the tragedy, strange photographic evidence, selective and severe injuries, and a lack of conventional explanations for the hiker's panicked escape and ultimate deaths. Lev Ivanov, the original lead investigator of the Dyatlov case, later admitted in the 1990s that he believed UFOs could have played a role. In an interview, he stated that he and expert E.P. Maslenikov had observed burnt treetops on young pines near the forest edge, with no signs of explosions, craters, or consistent heat patterns. This kind of selective burning, only on the tops, not the whole trees, is considered unusual under normal forest fire behavior, which typically starts at the bottom and burns upward. In his 1990 article, The Mystery of the Fireballs, Ivanov claimed that high-level Soviet officials, notably A.P. Kirilenko and A.F. Yashokin, had ordered him to remove all materials from the case that mentioned UFOs or glowing spheres. This included testimonies from Mansi hunters, sketches of luminous spheres, and eyewitness accounts of strange objects in the sky. This statement has fueled conspiracy theories about a possible UFO encounter or military test gone wrong, which might explain the mysterious injuries and circumstances surrounding the hikers' deaths. Interestingly, A.P. Kirilenko, one of the officials who interfered with the investigation, later became fascinated with UFO phenomena. He reportedly requested classified reports from KGB archives and was briefed by Yuri Andropov himself, head of the KGB and future leader of the USSR. After Stalin's death in 1953, UFO research in the Soviet Union became more active. In 1967, astronomer Felix Ziegel, together with other scientists, organized the first official Soviet group dedicated to the study of UFOs. This group collected thousands of eyewitness accounts and conducted analysis of numerous cases involving sightings of anomalous phenomena. Much of this data and early research was made public in the 1968 book Inhabited Cosmos. Arguments supporting the UFO theory, key points in favor, eyewitness reports of glowing fireballs and aerial phenomena over the Ural Mountains in early February 1959. Burned treetops found at the scene, inconsistent with known natural phenomena. Photographs number 17 and number 33, which some interpret as showing strange figures or objects. High radiation levels found on the hiker's clothing, which cannot be easily explained by environmental exposure. Panic-driven escape, with no physical signs of an intruder or fight. Severe internal injuries, similar to those caused by shockwaves or energy blast by night, not from falling or exposure. Criticism and weaknesses of the theory. No official confirmation of UFO sightings, although censorship in the Soviet Union may have concealed such reports. No physical evidence of alien presence, no debris, artifacts, or traceable energy sources. Many aspects of the theory are speculative, based on interpretation of photographs and second-hand testimony. The infrasound theory is one of the most intriguing and scientifically grounded explanations for the Dyatlov group's mysterious deaths. It combines meteorological and psychological science with the known facts from the site. According to this theory, infrasound may have caused sudden panic among the hikers, forcing them to flee their tent and fall victim to the brutal cold before regaining control of themselves. What is infrasound? Infrasound refers to sound waves with frequencies below 20 Hz, below the threshold of human hearing. While we can't hear it, infrasound can have powerful effects on the human body and mind. At certain frequencies and amplitudes, it can trigger intense anxiety and panic, a sensation of chest pressure, dizziness and disorientation. The Ural Mountains, particularly around Mount Kolat-Syakhl, can create rare weather conditions where strong winds flowing over mountain ridges produce the so-called Kármán vortex street, swirling air currents that can generate infrasound. In 2013, American researcher Donnie Eichar proposed a theory that a Katabatic wind, a strong, cold, downslope wind, interacting with the topography of the pass, could have produced infrasound waves that triggered panic in the hikers. He presented this theory in his book Dead Mountain, the untold true story of the Dyatlov Pass incident, which became a New York Times and Wall Street Journal nonfiction bestseller in 2013. Due to the unique dome-like shape of Dead Mountain, fierce winds funneled through the pass could have bent and rebounded off its blunt surface, creating a series of small but powerful air vortices, similar to mini tornadoes. While these may not have physically hit the tent, they could have produced specific low-frequency sound waves under the right conditions. Research has shown that infrasound can significantly impact the human body, leading to symptoms like breathlessness, sleep disruption, and intense fear. British psychologist Richard Wiseman supports the psychological impact of infrasound. In 2003, he conducted an experiment during a live concert where some musical pieces included infrasound at around 17 Hz. The audience, unaware of this, reported sensations of unease, fear, chills, and a strange feeling of a presence nearby. Although it may sound unbelievable at first, Eicher argues that this is the only explanation that fits both the strange behavior of the group and how their bodies were discovered. After decades of speculation, scientific inquiry, and declassified documents, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most chilling and unexplained mysteries of the 20th century. Was it a tragic accident unleashed by nature's fury, or something far more unsettling? We've explored the leading theories, from a sudden avalanche to a military cover-up, from Mansi involvement to the possibility of something extraterrestrial. Now it's your turn. Which theory do you believe is closest to the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's unravel this mystery together, because the final answer might still be hidden beneath the snow. And if you found this investigation compelling, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss what we uncover next.